Good evening. This is the Monday Agenda. The Monday Agenda today is talking to Professor Elisante Ole Gabriel, who is the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Livestock and Fisheries. He is specifically on the docket of livestock. And today we are looking onto the 5 business chains that are essential in transforming businesses here in Tanzania, but Tanzania looking onto the livestock where it works, but we're looking onto these chains that can transform any business anywhere in the world. Yes, Professor, we are now, as a country, Tanzania, have advanced to a low middle income state. And there are a lot of factors which have contributed to that fact. And I want to spend with you about 45 minutes to look onto the business chains and the performance improvement, focusing on the livestock ministry. Maybe to start, to begin, an overview of the livestock ministry.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this program. I guess it is my second time to be in this program, and I appreciate the support you're giving to the ministry also to educate the public and the stakeholders. So when we talk about the Ministry of Livestock and Fisheries, it has 2 major sectors. One sector is livestock and another sector is fisheries. And there we have one minister, Honorable Mashimba Mashauri Ndaki, the MP for Maswa, and the Deputy Minister, Honorable Gekul Pauline Filippo, the MP for Babati. And the setting is we have 2 permanent secretaries, so I am dealing with the livestock sector, while my colleague Dr. Rashid Tamatama dealing with the fisheries sector. Now, very quickly, when you come over to the livestock sector, we get about 4 technical departments, we call them directorates, and 1 council. So we have the Directorate of Veterinary Services, Directorate of Production and Marketing, Directorate of Grazing Land and Animal Feeds, and also we have Directorate of Research, Extension and Training. But also we have the Veterinary Council of Tanzania. So if you like, those are the 4 directorates, 1 council to make sure that our stakeholders are getting the right services, but we get about 8 sections within the ministry supporting the permanent secretary, but also 2 major departments, that is Department of Human Resource Management and also Department of Policy and Planning. So in a nutshell, that is how it is, and I must start by appreciating a very good support from the employees of the ministry, particularly in this very particular sector I'm leading. They're giving us as top leaders a very, very good support, and that's why we feel that we are really advancing and even giving a good contribution to the middle income economy to Tanzania, as you have just said.
When we describe agriculture in Tanzania, we also include the livestock. Just so to understand, 60 years after the independence, we're commemorating 60 years this 9th of December. What would you rate, what would you say is the contribution of the livestock sector to the economy in Tanzania?
As we speak now, heads of cattle, we have about 33.4 million. And you talk about goats, about 21.29 million. Sheep, we have 5.65 million. And you talk about pigs, we have about 2 million. And the chicken, we are now at a tune of 83.2 million. And when you talk about eggs, it's more than 4 billion, with 800 billion shillings. So that's the overview, what we can say. But in terms of contribution to the GDP, as we speak now, the sector is contributing 7.64% to the GDP, and it's growing at a rate of 5.0%. However, the focus we have at the ministry and the dreams of our minister, Honorable Mashimba Mashauri Ndaki, is to double the contribution up to 15% possibly, as we reach 2025 possibly, but also to double the growth, and we think that is quite possible. If you look in terms of monetary contribution, if I just take comparison from when the current president, Dr. John Pombe Joseph Magufuli, came to power in 2015-16 financial year, the contribution of the sector to the central fund was 14.1 billion Tanzanian shillings. But guess what? 5 years later, that is 2020, the sector contributed 44.85 billion. That is, just in 5 years, it managed to grow for more than 210%. So I want to say that basically the sector is growing, the sector is contributing, and I wonder why we even thought at the ministry that we don't have to be only thinking about the livestock keepers, the farmers of the low level. That's why I'm more than happy with your program, because the target group now of this kind of discussion, we are also targeting the advanced farmers who are even looking on the business locally and internationally. Because everything you do, segmentation is necessary. But I hope today we shall talk at a different focus, at a different segment. We're looking on those farmers who are business operators in the livestock sector, so that so much the contribution you've asked can actually grow, and also the impact in the employment agenda of this sector can also grow, because we believe that when we have a lot of people working in this sector who can create employment, that is important. Not forgetting that more than 50% of the households in this country, they are actually in livestock sector. But again, more than 84.1% of the youth in this country, they're in agribusiness. Because you look on the statistics of youth in 2012, we're at a tune of about 35 million, but we are talking about the youth, they are 16.4 million, but 13 million, they're in agribusiness. And that is 84.1%. What message are we getting there is that even as we talk about the development agenda for youth, you can never achieve the development agenda for youth minus the agribusiness.
Absolutely.
And talk about the agribusiness, you're talking about crops, you're talking about livestock, you're talking about fishery. So I think our discussion today should be considered at an advanced stage, and I think that is important. These guys who are graduating from the universities, but they're still having a myopic thinking that they have to be employed. Employment, self-employment is too much in livestock, too much in fishery, too much in crop production. And I guess that can only happen if they also get some tips on how best they can also behave in business. Because doing business is not a charity activity. It needs science, and that is important.
Prof, you've mentioned in a span of 5 years, we've had an increment of over 200%.
Yes.
I want to learn from you and understand, does that reflect also on the dietary consumption of an individual? If we say 200% increment, does that also mean that we've had an increment in the consumption of meat, an increment in the consumption of white meat, an increment in the consumption of eggs and products coming from the livestock sector?
According to the statistics of FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations,
Yes.
it still seems that we still have a lot to do in terms of consumption pattern. Because when you come to livestock, we have three main products. We have hides and skin, we have beef, which is called meat, which is okay, but we have milk. Now, talking of the two, according to FAO, a normal human being is supposed to be consuming, in terms of milk, 200 liters per annum.
200 liters.
200 liters per annum. But what is happening in Tanzania? In 2019, we reached 49 liters per annum. And in 2020 is when we reach 54 liters per annum, which means we still have a long way to go, and I encourage and request Tanzanians to be really consuming milk from Tanzania.
So basically, this increment is for business, and business beyond our borders.
Yes, business beyond our borders, but also collection of fees and levies from different angles. You come to beef, we are supposed to be consuming 50 kilos per annum. The point is, yes, it has grown by 200%, but it can grow more and more. That's why even our president is encouraging Tanzanians to be using and consuming products which are manufactured locally, because you come to hides and skin, we still have a lot of people who are importing leather products from abroad, though it may not mean that they are of good quality. Talk of shoes, for instance, we are only producing 1.2 million pairs a year, but consumption is more than 38 million pairs per year, which means more than 37 million pairs are imported from abroad. But thank God that we now have some good companies like Taifa Leather in Morogoro, Kilimanjaro International Leather in Kilimanjaro, and we encourage Tanzanians to be using actually also leather products from Tanzania. You look on average statistics for men, like me, Gabriel, and you, Makani, for men, at least you should have 3 pairs of shoes on average. Yes. An average woman in Tanzania will have 5 pairs of shoes. And you see, that's a lot. So it's not only about the population we have, but also the number. And some ladies, with their good positions, they can even have to 10 pairs. They can even forget the pairs they have. They just keep on wearing them. But if they want to be buying from Tanzania, all our 3 products can actually be having a good market. And I still believe there is a lot of potential, huge opportunity for the growth. That's why Honorable Mashimba Mashauri Ndaki is predicting that we can double the contribution, we can double the growth of the sector.
Professor, you're coming up with a revolution in the business knowledge, and I'm proud that this contribution is coming from Africa, but not only Africa, that it's coming from Tanzania. Prof, we're looking onto the business performance, and you're coming up with the concept of the 5 chains. Can we understand what are these 5 chains that are key, essential in the improvement or in the transformation of businesses? Giving an example of the livestock sector.
You're very right. You see, when you talk about business, because I think I like the way you've said it, that we talk about business, then we focus on livestock. So to start with, when you talk about business, many businesses, sometimes they fail to understand even the philosophy of business and what exactly is business. And a business has 5 specifics. It must be a specific activity for specific people to be performed by specific people for specific objectives within a specified period of time. So those are 5 specifics. Everything we do, it being manufacturing, service industry, even religious institutions, political institutions, everything we do is business because those 5 specifics are there. The big question is, how do we manage them? However, we now have to look from the business perspective, the 5 business chains. This is a little bit a new dimension of thinking, because more often than not, around the globe, people are really talking about the value chain, value chain, value chain. And this value chain has been developed way back in 1985 by Professor Michael Porter of Harvard University. Lucky enough, he's a friend of mine because when I was also in the universities teaching, I've been teaching business strategies. And I thought of his value chain and I realized that we may have to improve some of the things. So in 2004, I started developing different value chain for services and a value chain for higher learning institutions, and I shared with him, and lucky enough he approved and said, yes, it's a new thinking. And also I shared with Professor Philip Kotler, a guru in marketing. He also said, yeah, go ahead. But I didn't end there. Recently, I kept on thinking that, well, the value chain alone can't actually serve the purpose. So we now have the concept of 5 business value chains, 5 business chains, which must be integrated. And for the benefit of the viewers and listeners, let me just mention them.
Yes.
One, Makani, we have to consider the value chain. When you talk about the value chain, basically is to appreciate that people are not buying products, believe me. People are buying values.
Correct.
And that is critical. And Professor Michael Porter, when he was talking about the value, his value chain, it fits in the manufacturing sector, which does fit also very well in the livestock sector because we're a manufacturing sector. He was talking about the 5 primary activities, correct, so to speak, the 5. He was talking about inbound logistics, operation, outbound logistics, marketing, and also services. But now, if you take this in the livestock sector, it fits pretty well. But when you're talking the service industry, it doesn't fit. But he has about 4 supporting activities. But the point is, in the value chain, everybody in business must understand what value is he selling. If somebody is selling beef, he should ask himself or herself, what exactly am I offering to the customers? Because people are not buying beef. People are buying taste. And people are not buying milk, they are buying health. People are not buying leather, they are buying fashion.
Correct.
So the value chain has to be considered from that perspective. But another chain which is critical is cost chain. Cost chain is critical and very much ignored. Because we have to ask ourselves, what cost am I using to attain this value? And that is critical. I repeat, what cost am I using to recoup this particular value? In other words, people should never be smiling for the sales volume. That's very misleading. And it has misled so many organizations. People should smile when they compare sales and cost of goods sold. That is important. We normally say in cost chain management, you remove the non-value adding cost. For that very reason, Makani, I want also to encourage the business community. They have to consider the cost chain, because the cost chain can help them to decide the pricing strategy to be used. And guess what? Many people also, because they are very poor in managing the cost chain, they also fail in the pricing strategies. People are only sticking in one pricing strategy, but there are about 8 pricing strategies. But people are sticking to one. Why? Because they only think, well, I just have to get some money and get my cost, that's it. But there are different pricing strategies, from cost plus, market scheming, market penetration, clearing the stock, market leader, market driver, and also cross-subsidization. Now, if the business community are aware of this, they will choose the right pricing strategy based on the cost management. Yes, at some points you may have to sell below the cost because maybe you're using the market penetration strategy. So you have the purpose to do that. You do that within a very short period of time. That's what Coca-Cola did for some years ago. You're going to go for cross-subsidization. If you're making some profits in market A in a different country, you cross-subsidize in another country, then you actually get the game going. So cost chain is critical. But another chain is what I call profitability chain. Profitability chain is what should give a smile to the business person. We don't grow by value, as I said, or even sales. But you take your sales minus cost, then you get gross profit. And you can go later on to net profit. So profitability chain of any industry is critical. This translates then in our companies in the livestock sector dealing with hides and skin, dealing with dairy, dealing with the beef, not they have, but they must know what is the trend of their profitability chain. It is the profitability chain which is going to make them to survive in the business or get out of the business. Up to now, if you look on the hides and skin, we have about 9 factories, but 5 of them are working very well. If you come to the dairy industry, we have about 99 factories and about 92 are working very well. And you come to the beef, we have about 28 and many of them are coming up. You have now big companies like Tan Choice in Coastal Region. You have some other companies like Elia Meat Factory in Longido. But my message to them, those are private sectors, but my message to them is it is critical they must understand their profitability chain as a third chain. The fourth chain is what I call revenue-based chain. The revenue-based chain helps any business operator to be able to get other sources of funding as operating capital so that you can expand the business. If you don't have a revenue chain, if you don't know where you're going to get some other sources, then you can only collapse because a client has delayed paying you, then you cannot operate because you cannot get loans, you cannot outsource any other money. So it is important that chain to be also well managed. In the macroeconomy, like a country like this one, what is happening is that President Magufuli has done a great job to make sure that the non-tax revenue base is expanded as much as possible. The natural wealth of the nation is now contributing significantly to the economy. Now, that is at the macro level, national level. But so too at the company level, it is important that they also consider the revenue-based chain, how is it managed. Last but never the least, human capital chain. More often than not, we ignore the quality of the human being. I normally say it's not about the number of people you have in the organization which is going to sustain you, but it's too much about the number of brains you have. And that is different. So many people are going to say, well, we really don't have enough people in the organization. I need 20 more. The issue is not about 20 more. The question is, how many brains do you have? Not how many people.
The quality.
The quality of the people. That we call it the economies of scope versus economies of scale. Because in the economies of scale, you look on how many things you can produce.
Yes.
But in economies of scope, how many functions one device can do. So too in the human capital management or human capital chain, you look on one human being, how many functions can they do? You look now, we're going to have a driver in the organization, you only drive a car, put the officer there, wait for 10 or 7 or 8 hours for that person. But this driver could be reused in other functions, for instance. But also you're going to have some people who are part of the solution, not part of the problem. So my point for me is, even in the universities, we have to make sure that we tune the graduates so that they come to the system to add value. Because even the employers, they don't employ people, they employ brains, they employ value. So everybody who wants to be employed must ask himself or herself a question. What value am I taking to that bank? What value am I taking to that ministry, to that institution? Not about the division 1, not about the GPA, which is 4.5 or 5, not about the first class, no. What value are you taking to that organization as human capital? That's why now we are talking of human capital, not just human resource management. So that is the whole concept about the 5 business chains. But finally, I must say, these 5 chains, they must be integrated. They should work interdependently. And that is important.
I do not know if the Monday agenda, the 45 minutes of the Monday agenda can actually do justice to such a wealth of knowledge. But just to understand, Prof, the 5th regime under President John Joseph Pombe Magufuli has really transformed the business performance, and especially in, or rather the performance, and especially in the public sector. There's more accountability. You know, there's a major transformation in the public sector. This knowledge that you've just expounded in a very brief span, and I really wish to spend more time onto it. How is this now currently being implemented, especially in the public sector? Before we go onto the private sector, but how is this cascaded in the public sector? Is it part of the transformation that we're seeing now in the public sector? And are there any chains, in your opinion, that you think are left out when executing duties, especially not looking onto the service sector? Of course, the public sector is mainly the service sector, looking onto the business environment, performance in the country, but not looking onto the livestock sector, which we are discussing on the program, but which are the chains that are forgone, and why are they important, and especially in the public sector now? I'm asking you as the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Livestock.
I think those are 2 questions in one.
Yes.
Let me start with the first part about the situation in the public sector. My assessment is, you see, if you allow me to take you back to the Bible, even the devil says, if I hit the shepherd, then the flock will be in trouble. Dispersed. But also if the shepherd is strong, even the flock will be stable. So I must say over and over again that the leader has given the direction, His Excellency the President. And he has, as you said correctly, he has raised the discipline of the government, you know, to a very high level. Yes. And even the 5 chains I'm talking about, they are now performing because of his good leadership. And I must say again, if you bring to the strategic thinking, you know, normally we don't get a lot of credits because of what we do, but how we do. And yet you can see the way he does, the way, not only what he does, but the way he does things is in a very different way. And that has brought a lot of discipline to the public sector. So no doubt about that. Now, coming to the assessment of the application of the 5 chains, I think everything is going on well. But to my opinion, I think there are 2 chains which needs a more special attention. And that's the cost chain and the human capital chain. In my opinion, you talk about the value chain, revenue chain, and profitability chain. They are somehow reasonably managed, but I still think that there is a lot of efforts to be put in the cost chain. And I think even most of the organizations which collapsed and which will keep on collapsing is about the ignorance of the cost chain. You know, more often than not, we keep on spending without asking a question, what value are you going to get out of this spending? So I think that area needs a very special attention in the public sector, but I think also in the private sector, because it's important. And even in the livestock sector, we are really trying to emphasize that very much. We are having now a private sector desk in the ministry. We actually started it in the 1st of October 2019. And it's doing very well. Just to keep on telling people that you people, it's not about getting into the business, but the most important thing is how do you sustain yourself in business. And I tell you, Makani, I tell the viewers and the listeners, the first killer of the business is poor management of the cost chain. People do ignore that. But the second one is about the human capital chain. Now, a lot of people normally want to employ cheap labor. And I sometimes say cheap is not cheap anyway. So cheap is very expensive, especially in the long run. So I normally say it is important to get the right people at the right place. Look on the human capital management. You look on this 5th regime. It's all about delivery. Absolutely purely about delivery. Nothing less, nothing more. You get a position, you're appointed in the morning, you mess up in the evening, you're out of the game.
Absolutely.
And that's it. What does that mean? That is what has changed the position of the country, back to what you asked me in the beginning, from the least developed countries to middle income, but in a very special time of trying, at the time when the whole world is in the crisis of COVID-19. That is the time, even with the crisis of COVID-19, yet, because of scientific and strategic leadership of our president about these 2 chains, the cost chain and human capital chain, we managed to move a step forward and go to the middle income 5 years before the deadline given.
This is the Monday Agenda, and with me on the Monday Agenda today, powerful discussion, is Professor Elisante Gabriel. And Professor, just to catch up to your very last explanation,
yes,
on putting up a private sector desk in the Ministry of Livestock and Fisheries. I believe that is to, as you rightly said, to tell the private sector that yes, it can be done. What's your advice in terms of what should the private sector do to position themselves competitively? Giving an example again, sticking to the livestock sector.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think number one is that the government's role is to set up the conducive environment for the business to operate. So basically, government is not to do business, but to create a conducive business environment. So my advice to the private sector, and lucky enough, I once spoke to the CEO of the private sector, is that they should stop complaining. They should be doing things.
Absolutely.
They have to be, you have to be getting into business, helping the stakeholders, helping the business community. So our desk, which has been inaugurated on the 1st of October 2019, we are trying to encourage the private sector that, hey, here are the opportunities, do them. Because what I've been telling the private sector, and is a hard fact, is that if they see some challenges in the business environment, that is where the money is. Because you have to convert that challenge to an opportunity. And there is no question about that. So if they say, well, by the way, we don't have enough supply of animal feeds. That is an opportunity for the private sector. If we say, well, there is no water to feed cattle, that is a business opportunity for the private sector. So that is how we are looking for the private sector. That's what we are trying to encourage the private sector. And what else the desk has been doing, and it is still doing, is to connect the farmers, the livestock keepers, with the financial institutions. Thanks a lot to our friend Justin, the CEO of Tanzania Agricultural Development Bank, is giving a great support to the livestock and also fisheries sector, so that those farmers can actually now get adequate loans so they can also run the business. However, a very strong however, in capital letters bold, there is a difference. I'm telling the private sector, there is a difference of asking for money and asking for loan. Those are two different things. Anybody in business is going to borrow money, they should know that is a loan. It's not just money. That gonna need the business operator to be extremely disciplined in managing the 5 chains I said, especially the cost chain, to make sure that at the end of the day, they will be able to repay back the loan. The one giving you a loan is not your uncle, it's not your sister, it's not your brother. It is an institution. They have also their business agenda. They're in business. They want to get the interest back and the principal back, the money. So the private sector, more often than not, they must, and when I use the word must, I mean it, it's different from have. They must have a discipline of managing their businesses so that the financial institutions can have enough confidence on them, even to give them the loans. Number 2, the private sector have to be looking now to the international markets. It is important that we open up the markets, because every business, for the private sector, they should know, every business, the driving force is the market. You put the right market, basically all the other facets on the downstream, they'll just pick up, provided there is market. The market will determine the price, the quality, the quantity, and even the taste. So the private sector has to be quite upfront. And finally, the private sector, they should invest on R&D, research and development. They should never be producing what they can produce. They should produce what they can sell. What does that mean? They must carry research number 1 to know what is to be sold. They carry research number 2 to tell the customers that I have made what you told me to do. And that's why we have 5 different philosophies in marketing. From the production philosophy, product philosophy, selling philosophy, marketing philosophy, and societal marketing philosophy, with the 2 additions now, one-to-one marketing and relationship marketing. And thank God the last 2, they've been added again by a Tanzanian expert called Ole Gabriel again. So the 2 additional marketing concepts, relationship marketing concept, one-to-one, I added them. And what I was saying is then talk about relationship marketing concept, that the private sector, they must create a solid relationship with their customers, because your network is your net wealth. But what I have also added in the philosophies is about the one-to-one. That means you save him, not them. When you are saving a customer, you save him as if there is nobody else you are saving, you're only saving him. But local now we do, even in the private sector, is pathetic sometimes, the way the customer service is given. And customer service doesn't need really any serious investment. It's about the mindset of the people. So strategic customer service in the banks, in the livestock sector, in the fisheries, in the mining, in every sector, and even in the public sector. That is what our president is really guiding us, to save the people. Because when you save them, they're going to have a strong confidence with your services.
It has been trendy recently that everyone is looking onto external markets. Everyone is looking onto producing for, Europe, producing for America, producing for UK. I'm wondering, Professor, is this it with the private sector? You mentioned rightly that the production of, for instance, shoes in Tanzania is at 1.2
million, yeah.
million, while the demand is
Over 38 million.
over 38 million, and we have the potential and the ability to do that. Why are we Eurocentric? Why are we external-centric? Why is our focus external markets?
Thank you so much. Very lovely. You mentioned about thinking about external product and internal products, and in business we have what you call geocentric, when people are really focusing too much buying from abroad, and ethnocentric, as you said it, when people are very much focusing on using their own products. So for the private sector and even the public and whatever the case, before being fancy of buying products from abroad, I encourage them to think of buying local products. That's the first premise. The second premise also, we encourage our private sector to be selling abroad. But before selling abroad, there are some works to be done, because the models of economy gonna tell about the four sectors model. First sector is when you have a production which can only enable you to consume. But also two sectors, you consume, then you save. Three sector model, you consume, you save, you invest. It is only when you reach the four sector model, whereby you consume, you save, you invest, then you export. That's gonna tell that there is a good homework to be done before going to the international markets, because it is expensive. So we normally say there are some drivers to globalization, some drivers who can take you to the international markets, and that's gonna be cost also. That is important to look on the cost, but also you have to look on competition, because that is extremely important. But also you have to look on the markets. But more importantly, because there are four drivers of globalization, is about the government. It is and really meant to be extremely important. And I normally tell the business community, the setup of the government we have, the chemistry of the government we have, is one of the most appropriate settings for people to even to do business, to be exporting and even to be importing. But I caution people, before going abroad, it is important to make a proper assessment. Rushing to China, for instance, to start doing importation, you need to think carefully about the cost chain. It's part of the cost chain, because people think about the sales. They bring a consignment from China, they sell here, they're happy, oh, I sold 50 million. But you have sold 50 million, but basically your cost chain, you've spent 49 million. You're only making a gross profit of 1 million, and you never even consider the hotel you slept in China. So I am the taxes, exactly.
And that's why the in transit.
Yes, in transit.
Airport, consumption and all that.
And Makani, another thing is about the opportunity cost. You see, the time you spend going abroad and so on, you'll have done maybe something else. That's what they call in economics the opportunity cost. So that's why I said earlier on, cost chain management is critical. And I urge the universities to also be giving this culture to our students before they graduate, to understand this concept of integrated 5 business chains, so that even when they come to the labor market, they don't have always to think about to be employed, but also they have to know these ABCs, that if they start their own businesses, how do they survive? Because that is important. Do they have to rush to go to America, United Kingdom, Asia? They have to sit down and think carefully about these 5 business chains, and I believe that anybody at the individual level, at the organizational level, even at the national level, these 5 business chains can really change the question of the business, both microeconomy, so to macroeconomy, and you can be stable.
We're drawing very close to the end of the program, and I still have so much to tap from that wealth. The world is struck by COVID-19, and it will be not appropriate to end the program without looking on to how impactful COVID-19 can be to these 5 chains. Maybe you want to give us your views on that.
As I said earlier on, for any threat, there is an opportunity. So even COVID-19, yes, it is a global threat, but in any case, it is equally an opportunity to our livestock sector, in the sense that basically many countries are in the lockdown. Tanzania is not. And in any case, certainly the demand of food the livestock products now will also be in need now and even in a short while. Not only that, but also even the patients with COVID, they also need a lot of protein. Yeah. And they need vitamins and so on. And you talk of milk, you get all the vitamins. You talk of beef, you get also the vitamins, you get protein. And you look on beef, you see it is believed that you can even get we call it CP, crude protein, up to 88%. And in some of the products, because in the DM there, DM means dry matters in management of the beef and the animal feeds. And in those matters, we can also get a lot of ingredients for health. So I say, yes, it is a crisis, but I tell you the truth, the way the government has managed this has been really a great rescue also to our sector, because every single day, these Tanzanians must know, every single day in this beautiful nation, you talk of milk, we spend about 8.6 million liters every single day. You talk of beef, we spend about in milk we spend 8.3 million liters, and in beef we spend about 2.6 million kilograms of beef every single day. Now, if you will have gone to the lockdown, it means the business will have been shut down, and possibly at the end of the day we start importing. So for us, we take it with caution, and I'm glad the farmers are taking everything with caution, but also we work very hard, and we take also the other steps, including the precautions, the prayers, and the physical exercising, and I do believe that we can go out of this, and we shall also make use of it as an opportunity as well for our nation.
Professor Elisante Ole Gabriel, his docket is on the livestock. He's been talking for me on the Monday agenda for the past 45 minutes on the five chains that must work interchangeably towards really making business sense. We focus on the livestock sector where he works, but these are working across different sectors in the goods and services sectors as well. There's so much we still could have spoken. There's so much to tap onto such wealth, but my program is only for 45 minutes, so I really am very thankful. We shall look for more opportunities on the Monday agenda and other programs that, we still expand this knowledge so that we, my viewers and myself, can still get this knowledge and put this knowledge onto practice. I believe so much is on the plate and so much is to come through you, Prof, and we wish you all the very best. Please take this knowledge to especially the academia, so that it's more applicable, so that we really, go hand in hand with the speed, transform this nation into really middle income to even first economy states in the world. And I believe, with input of such put into practice, yes, we are getting there. So really, thank you so much for gracing the Monday agenda. My dear viewers, it's truly been an honor. I'm your host, Makani. Until next time, this was the Monday agenda. Thank you for watching.